Hey everyone, thank you very much for joining us. I'm joined here today with Hunter Moore from Plasma Games for your first episode of Logically Speaking with me, Phil, over at Game Logic. Hey Hunter, how's it going?
Doing great. How are you doing today, Phil?
Yeah, doing very, very well, thanks. You're North Carolina, that's right?
That is correct.
Nice. How are things going there for you at the moment?
Spectacular. It's an exciting time for educational games. Like educational, once this pandemic came out, just exploded, and being in this kind of educational game space is once in a lifetime experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure we'll dive deeper into that in a minute. First, I'd love to introduce you to our viewers. You know, who is Hunter Moore? What do you do, and how did you get to where you are today?
I am the CEO of Plasma Games. So we have a 3D educational video game company to teach physics and chemistry. We use actual technologies and science standards inside engaging gameplay. So it's just like a Fortnite kind of ish game, but turn-based strategy. And all of the mechanics are the learning standards and something we would normally do for fun in a video game.
That's awesome. And I noticed, just to rewind it back slightly as well, you took this step into making these experiences. Is it right? You were being a bit of a Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone, making traps for your sister to help against bad guys?
Yes. Excellent point. I've always started building stuff as an engineer. I've got an undergraduate and master's in robotics and microelectronic mechanical systems from Georgia Tech. I've done nano research with Sandia National Labs, jet engine research with Pratt & Whitney, commercial aircraft manufacturing with Boeing, software with IBM, and then started Plasma Games. I started Plasma Games because at all of these STEM corporations, we had a hard time finding qualified Americans for these jobs. It was terrible. And I started flooded with applicants from the rest of the world, and wanted to figure out why this was. So I found out the United States ranks 25th in the world in science and 35th in the world in math. I'm like, I have to take a minute to count 35 countries, right? So I wanted to make the biggest possible impact I could on our society. So I targeted the niche that we would need the most based on our biggest economic impact that would have. And that was targeted around the one that would create the biggest impact on our economy, evaluated by the one that would create the most high-paying, high-quality jobs, be in high-growth industries and difficult to offshore because we're looking at long-term economic growth. Then chemistry was the biggest problem there. They interviewed a bunch of teachers on what their biggest challenge was. Engagement, and it's like, how do you get student engagement? Video game, right? So that was the path. Then we won a National Science Foundation Award. So I spent like 4 years writing grants, kind of crazy. It ended up winning a National Science Foundation Award to be able to pay some people. But the great thing about that is it's like trillions of iterations happen. And it was all in Google Slides and different ideas. So the more refinement to have when you actually get ready to go forward, it's much better than getting the money and going forward on something that's not fully fleshed out, because it'll cost you like 4 times as much if you do it that way.
Yeah, it's incredible. So how long has your total journey been to now, do you think, from idea to actually being Plasma Games?
About 9 years. And yeah, 9 years full time. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And we were in R&D for like 6.5 years. And we could have launched at a better time. So we launched our first like big product for schools right before the pandemic hit. And then e-learning became something huge. So we've been able to really grow, quickly after that.
Yeah, it's been almost like a petri dish, isn't it? An accelerated social experiment for everything at the moment. So I definitely think you did land at the right time. And I think particularly in a wider society point of view as well. I mean, STEM has always been something that's traditionally very undervalued, I think, for kids growing up. It's very hard to get people involved, particularly from a diversity point of view as well, getting people who may have come from underprivileged backgrounds who are now getting access to these things that they may not have had before.
That's a super great point. And we made sure in our game to cover that as well, because we have 2/3 of our character are minority female protagonists. And I do this not just for the sake of it, but it's like we're competing against China. China graduated 2 million engineers last year to our 100,000. That's 20 times the number of engineers every year. Like, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent.
No, that's absolutely the point of these conversations. It's so what are you guys doing differently? So I did some research on some of your views on some of this before. How traditionally someone will make an educational game. I say it in inverted commas, and it will just be some kind of gameplay tacked onto some kind of scientific theorem or something, and it doesn't really relate. It doesn't adapt. You can't really process that information properly. So what is it exactly that you guys are doing differently for this, and how do you think you're going to be getting more children and people involved in STEM for the future?
So turn-based strategy game. I just jumped right in the middle of the game because I think that you have to learn all this all at once. But so like jump boots that you use right here, you actually get to engineer in the lab, which I'll show you in a second. But then like this is what I was talking about with the laser. You calibrate the Bohr model of the atom, and how far the electron falls down determines the energy and frequency emits. So students can like play with it and see how the science works and the energy is transferred. Armor uses the element, this is bismuth, 20 kilograms of it, and the energy from the laser is absorbed, increasing the temperature until it reaches its melting temperature. And then when you get to the liquid region, you defeated the bad guy, but not too much, because energy is, you don't want to waste it. These bad guys have been stealing it and polluting our planet in the process. And you're shutting down these pollution machines and saving these scientists and engineers as you go.
Where have I heard this before?
I had to read like lots of books on like story and art and everything just to get kind of the idea of what I'm doing. I've never made a video game before, you know?
Yeah.
Which is crazy. All right, so you get the gist of that. Let me show you what the lab looks like, because this is the other really impactful part. Because you got all weapons and gear, but in between levels, you upgrade your gear just like in a normal game. But like your armor, it's actual zinc. So you only have the beginning zinc, tin, and lead, all of which have like low melting temperatures, low energy to melt. And as you progress, you get better ones like copper, silver, gold, platinum. Tungsten has the highest melting temperature, and niobium has the highest energy to melt. So just like in normal games, students are studying stats, comparing what they want to buy. But if they don't understand what they're doing, they're going to blow a bunch of money on the bet, because we don't price the best metal as the most expensive necessarily. The situations like jump boots, you have more air molecules come in, you can increase the pressure or the heat. So 7-year-olds be able to like beat this game and know that they put pressure and heat in their jump boots, they jump further. While at the same time, the like AP chemistry student can see how the ideal gas law and the pressure temperature curve are actually used in real life. So that's kind of like what we're doing. Is it's all like a learning standard is a game mechanic inside a real world application or technology. It's kind of the formula. And that was the key to like designing it. It was like, that's the formula, you do that. If it's not that, you don't put it in there. Like it's non-negotiables. And that's kind of what you making a game, you want to kind of think, what's the think and feel, what's our purpose, target Marty, and then like, this is what we're doing. If it's not that, it's cut. Because you always stuff that's like fluff and not really adding value. If you put all your bang to where like where your value is, at least that's my philosophy of how to optimize.
I guess things that they'll learn in other classes, they can then apply to this game. And I think the moment they start doing that, and you've almost tricked them into learning there, and I'd imagine the kind of, as the light bulb turns on, I think you guys are just going, wow, this is incredible.
It's exciting. And then you can see where they went to school. We have like career paths, community college, as well as PhD paths, the jobs they have, the corporations that they can work at, and the scientists they save. And then they can equip them to their team for like a technology buff, that's work for this area, and then some other like backstory stuff.
That's awesome.
That's what we're doing.
Is that you in the gym there? Have they caught you out?
I wish.
Yeah, that's amazing. And And I think as well, you're creating, as you mentioned earlier, you're creating positive role models here. You know, they're thinking, I want to be that scientist. I can do that. And you know, the moment you've got them hook, line, and sinker, that's it. You know, you're never gonna lose that. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
But you always want to encourage is the bottom line. Like we used to have the real housewives of the astronauts. Like the astronauts were the people we looked up to. Now we have like Thug Life on TV. I mean, it's crazy of who society uplifts and where we advance. I think we need to have like battle bots and like stuff where really we're like, these are the people that you want to be like, kids. Come on. But that's my 2 cents.
Well, even recently with things like the James Webb Telescope going up, you know, I've been waiting for that for probably almost half my life now. It's when it was first announced.
What is it?
The James Webb Space Telescope. The Hubble Space Telescope was put up whenever it was now, years and years ago, before me, I think. Before I went to space, I've never been to space, but before I was born, I think. But since kind of the late 90s, early 2000s, there's been in development a new, better telescope. So basically, if you remember that special picture of the Hubble Deep Field Space picture, and it's got pretty much that little tiny segment of the sky, and then you've got these millions and millions and billions of years old universes in there. They've just about 2 weeks ago sent up a new telescope that's going to be hundreds and hundreds of times more powerful. It's out in space. It's not by Earth, so it's not got any kind of interference or anything as well.
Right. That's pretty cool.
And they're currently in deployment now. So it's at the point where this is the month. It's like the 30-day stretch of anything and everything could go wrong. So it's similar to you folks, obviously on a bigger scale, but about 7-8 years of just hard testing. That's all they've done, just to make sure this all goes.
So why are those guys that launched that all over the news?
Exactly. That's what I mean.
Like, well, what's going on here?
Yeah, it's incredible.
I get upset about that because it is incredible. Like Georgia Tech a couple years ago made like the discovery of the decade where Einstein had predicted you could see gravitational waves, and they like did it. Why aren't these people all over our media? It just blows my mind.
Yeah, I think hopefully though this angle in with games, like I say, it's tricking them in a good way to hopefully. So say. Let's move a few years ahead in the future now. So you've done your course, kids are loving the game. They're like, I want to be a scientist. They might want to come work for you over at Plasma Games. What kind of tips? What kind of tips could you give someone who's looking to make their steps into STEM and make their first, particularly down the games front? Would they do something like you did, for instance, study everything and then apply it, or would you just go straight into games? What would you advise?
Work hard. If you're smart, you're going to succeed only if you work hard too. Like if you're looking at STEM, nothing comes like second nature, and you just got to put the time in, and the rewards are there. Like you just got to look further down the road. If you do well in STEM, like the doors will be open to you. So look ahead to the future. So start looking at what jobs. Monster and Indeed.com. Go there. Because you can see what kind of jobs you can get, and anything gets you excited, you can kind of start thinking backwards of, okay, what does it take to get this job? It's usually listed on the job posting. Here's what we're looking for. So if you want this cool job making video games, you can see different areas that you can pursue and how to get there.
Awesome. And then taking a step forward, because at the moment as well, particularly with how the market is, there's this great resignation now. It seems to be that candidates pretty much have their pick of the bunch. If you're already in industry. So what advice could you give to other business owners like yourself and other employers to make that candidate experience special? Or how can you make it so that you as a business are being recognized amongst 50 other places that might be looking for the same job, for instance?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think what we do, one of our advantages is we're really impacting lives with what we're doing. And we've seen it through the research and, just testimonials and just being here, you can see it. That really having something bigger than just getting a paycheck or like something intangible is important. Recognition of good work is another. Accountability is another thing that people respect. It also helps you get rid of bad people, which frees you up to have more money for better people. I mean, seriously, that's another thing. Like getting rid of underperformers sooner rather than later is always better because they put it in the well. Like we have a small team, but we've been able to do incredible things. Everyone on the team, like rock star. And the other thing is not to fire anybody quickly if they have the right, like, if they have drive and the right attitude and they're willing to work with teams and like other stuff. Try and move them around in an organization where they will fit and do well. There's not always the case, but we've been able to retain like 3 employees recently by doing that. It's been tremendously helpful as well. Also, we have giant like clear goals, like our annual goal where if we win, our entire company is going to go to like Costa Rica.
Nice.
Sort of thing. And everyone has like goals below that missions, and there's like different incentives for different teams accomplishing, you know, their core metrics, like clear, measurable, you know, all the stuff you read in like business traction books and how to grow a corporation, gets and stuff.
Nice.
For people.
Cool. And then to wrap things up, what's next for you guys? I know it's
excellent question. So we've got really big plans. Don't know how much I can say at the moment, but we're building kind of, so we have what we have is a generation beyond basically everything else on the planet. We're starting development for the next gen stuff, and it's exciting. And I think it's going to have some overlap into the not just institutional education markets as well.
Awesome. Keep posted then. It's the problem, isn't it, with this industry? You can't show off half the stuff you're doing.
That's what it's like right before. Yeah.
Thanks, Hunter. I really appreciate your time joining us today. I hope everyone at home watching as well has learned something new and at least taken some stock from what we've been talking about here. Kids, get into STEM. You could be going to space. How awesome is that? You could also be making games. That would also be awesome too. Hunter, again, pleasure. And until next time, see you soon.